Rang Undang-Undang Kerajaan. Bacaan kali yang kedua. Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund Board Bill 2022. Yang Amat Berhormat Premier Sarawak, Menteri Kewangan dan Ekonomi Baru dan Adun N26 Gedong.
Terima kasih, Dato' Amat Speaker. I beg to move the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund Board Bill 2022 to be read second time. Terima kasih, Dato' Amat Speaker. This bill seeks to establish a state fund to be known as the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund in order to maximize returns from the state surplus capital reserve through investment. This sovereign wealth fund will be placed under the management and custodianship of a body corporate established under this bill to be called the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund Board. Terima kasih, Dato' Amat Speaker. The tabling of this bill is the government's fulfillment of its election promise, which is part of its manifesto by the GPS government for the 12th State Legislative Assembly election, and to prove that the GPS government takes its promises and its manifesto seriously. Global Sovereign Wealth Fund Landscape. Tan Sri Dato' Amat Speaker, the establishment of sovereign wealth funds worldwide has gained popularity in the last decade, and the value of assets under management under sovereign wealth funds has almost doubled from USD 4.8 trillion in 2010 to USD 9.1 trillion in 2020. Sovereign wealth funds are special purpose investment funds owned by governments, including central and subnational governments, to create sustainable financial and economic returns. Based on our study of the global sovereign wealth fund landscape, sovereign wealth funds can be categorized based on their mandates or objectives for establishment, and can be broadly classified into three categories, namely 1. Capital maximization, 2. Stabilization, and 3. Strategic development. Several benchmarking visits to study the best practices in sovereign wealth fund management, investment strategies, governance, as well as the appropriate legal policy framework were carried out. The countries visited were Norway, Singapore, and England. These countries have been lauded for having established sovereign wealth funds that have proven very successful and have gained international recognition for their transparent and good governance. These countries are also members of the International Forum of Sovereign Wealth Funds, that is the forum. As members of this forum, these countries are required to adhere to international best practices, including the generally accepted principle and practices for sovereign wealth funds, better known as the Santiago Principle, which advocate the following principle. 1. To help maintain stable global financial system and free flow of capital and investment. 2. To comply with all applicable regulatory and disclosure requirements in the countries in which they invest. 3. To invest based on economic and financial risk and return-related consideration. And 4. To have in place a transparent and sound governance structure that provides for effective operational controls, risk management, and accountability. With the establishment of our own sovereign wealth fund, the state intends to apply to be a member of the forum, as there is a need to ensure that we apply the highest standard of governance and transparency in managing our sovereign wealth fund. Tuan Sri Dato' Ahmad Speaker, positive attributes of successful funds recognized and noted during the study include, among other things, having the qualities of 1. Clear objective and purpose. 2. Relevant investment strategies to achieve objective. 3. Clearly defined funding appropriation. 4. Independent and competent board of guardians supported by an investment advisory panel. 5. Robust performance and risk management. 6. Restrictive withdrawal rules. And 7. Timely and transparent performance reporting. These good governance attributes will be taken up and institutionalized in the establishment of our sovereign wealth fund. Dato' Ahmad Speaker, purpose of the fund. Over the years, we have enjoyed commodity-based revenue, particularly from oil and gas. This revenue source, however, is depletable. And if the revenue is not managed and invested wisely, future generations will be deprived of the same economic benefits. Hence, it is critical to convert these non-renewable assets into financial assets so as to preserve and grow the state's current wealth. Ultimately, this will create an endowment to generate sustainable sources of income for future generations. Besides that, the sovereign wealth fund will sustain the financial fiscal position of the state via revenue diversification and creation of reserve, replacing oil and gas revenue in years to come. This will further strengthen the state's financial sustainability and enable it to meet any future eventualities. With this in mind, the setting up of a sovereign wealth fund by adopting a capital maximization model with benchmarking against Norway Sovereign Wealth Fund, that is the Norway Oil Fund, known as Norway Government Pension Fund Global, with a fund size of USD 1.25 trillion, is the strategy going forward. The same model is also adopted by US Alaska Permanent Fund Corporation with a fund size of USD 70.6 billion US dollar. Incidentally, these jurisdictions also have their prime sources of revenue from oil and gas, just like Sarawak. Hence, the establishment of a sovereign wealth fund will meet the purposes of 1. Converting non-renewable asset to financial asset. 2. Investing for the future through forced saving. And 3. Securing the continued growth of financial reserve through diversified investment. Structure of the fund. Tan Sri Dato' Mas Speaker, in realizing the setting up of the fund and to establish discipline, the government will be required by law to make initial and annual appropriation of sums of money to the fund, the amount of which will depend on the state financial standing from time to time. Money for the fund will come from the state consolidated fund through appropriation approved by resolution passed by this August House. The fund will comprise an initial and subsequently annual appropriation from the state consolidated fund. The amount of each annual appropriation would therefore be subject to the approval of this August House. The initial appropriation to the fund will be at 8 billion ringgit, with subsequent annual appropriation as follows. 1. 300 million annually from year 2 to year 5, 550 million annually from year 6 to year 10, and 650 million ringgit annually from year 11 to year 20. This appropriation of the fund will be disbursed into the fund investment fund account and be managed strictly in accordance with the investment mandate stated in second schedule of the bill. With this appropriation, the fund is expected to grow sustainably with no withdrawals, except in the case of critical events which might arise within this 20-year period or when the fund performs better than targeted. This bill institutionalizes the strict requirements for the withdrawal of monies from the fund. Specific provision regulating withdrawals of monies are found in Clause 8 of the bill. There are also provisions for the reinvestment of income of monies from the investment. In the case of the fund performing better than targeted, That is, there is excess income from the fund above the threshold set out in the bill. The Board of Guardians may transfer such excess income to an endowment account. The monies in the endowment fund account, which will be transferred to the state consolidated fund and held under a trust fund, can be utilized for the following purposes. 1. Education of people of Sarawak in tertiary institution or such other institution as may be approved by the Majlis Mesyuarat Kerajaan Negeri. 2. Improvement of the standard of living of people of Sarawak based on socio-economic needs. 3. Development of the talents, expertise, and the entrepreneurial skills of the people of Sarawak. And 4. Such other purposes as may be determined by the Majlis Mesyuarat Kerajaan Negeri in a new notification to be published in the Gazette and laid before this Dewan Undangan Negeri. The accounts of the fund and the annual report of activities concerning the fund will be laid before this August House in accordance with the bill. There are also provisions in the bill to regulate the expenditure of the Board of Guardians, whose annual budgeting expenses will have to be approved by the Majlis Mesyuarat Kerajaan Negeri. Governance of the Board. Tuan Sri Dato' Ahmad Speaker, the fund will be managed in a professional and transparent manner by members of the Board of Guardians comprising experts and professionals in the field of finance and investment. The ownership of all monies in the fund and all investment and income and returns from investment is vested in the state. The Board of Guardians will only be the custodians of the monies in the fund. For the above reason, the law, if passed, will require high degree of integrity, accountability, transparency, and professionalism from the Board of Guardians and all those in charge with the custody and management of the fund. This bill, therefore, incorporates features of good governance and international best practices in the management and investment of money in the fund as enshrined in the Santiago Principles. In addition, it is imperative that the fund and the people managing the fund be independent of any political interference. Therefore, a person will not be eligible to be appointed as a guardian if he is, at the time of his appointment, a member of a political party or a member of parliament or the legislature or local authority of any state in Malaysia. From a governance structure perspective, the composition of the Board of Guardians and the establishment of committees such as the Risk Committee, the Remuneration Committee, the Internal Audit Committee, the Investment Committee, and the Sharia Advisory Committee will be modeled based on the Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance. As an independent investment advisory panel will also be established to advise on the management and administration of the fund. Tuan Sri Dato' Ahmad Speaker, for all the above reasons, I have urged all honorable members of this August House to support this bill. I beg to move.
Another minister to second.
Tan Sri Dato' Ahmad Speaker, I beg to second.
Oleh Yang Berhormat, I shall now call upon honorable members who wish to participate in the debate on this bill. Member for Daro.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera dan salam sahabatku sayang. Thank you, Tan Sri Dato' Ahmad Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to participate in this debate. Tan Sri Dato' Ahmad Speaker, the Sarawak government under the leadership of our far-sighted leader, Yang Berhormat Tan Sri Dato' Petinggi Abang Jo, Premier of Sarawak, has always been committed to bring Sarawak for the better. This is proven by his commitment in his visit to London, Norway, and Singapore to learn in depth regarding establishing of our own sovereign fund. Before I go deeper, we need to understand what does sovereign funds means. It is defined as state-owned investment fund, runs on behalf of the people, frequently from the fund generated by government from the state surplus reserve. I believe this is a good move by the government to prosper the state as a developed state with high income by year 2030. Sarawak revenues majorly come from petroleum and natural gas trade, which Petronas finally agrees to pay Sarawak or RM 2.96 billion sales tax, has opened doors to more development projects and give backs to the people through bantuan khas Sarawakku Sayang or BKSS 1 from 1.0 up to BKS 9.0. Not only that, GPS government has brought multiply connectivity projects, which some has been cancelled during Pakatan Harapan government, which includes Batang Rabungan Bridge, Batang Lupa Bridge, and Batang Igan Bridge. This proves that the GPS has the capabilities in generating and managing our financial reserve. Apart from that, this puts Sarawak in excellent economic position, and the idea to invest the sovereign fund should be arises in this August House. Tan Sri Dato' Speaker, sovereign funds aims to invest in a variety of sectors as a way to accrue profit for the benefit of our beloved Sarawak economy, and definitely to our beloved citizens. Generally, sovereign funds target to 1. Protect the state wealth and invest it properly for future use in the case of economic crisis. Number 2, protect state's economy in budget from risk due to economic fluctuation, which include inflation. 3, maintain the tenets of intergenerational equity after mineral resources have been depleted. Number 4, also increase yield from sovereign exchange reserve via investments. Hence, this can be achieved by types of sovereign funds, namely, first, stabilization fund, also known as rainy day funds. They are made up of capital that a government has set aside to protect the nation from economic disaster. Unexpected occurrences called economic shock have a significant impact on how quickly economies flourish. The unanticipated incidents consist of unexpected tax rises or cut to welfare benefit, a financial crisis which can trigger a decline in central bank ability to lend or give credit, rapid increase in unemployment rates, unforeseen breakthrough in technology, sharp rise in price of petroleum and natural resources, and political turmoil. Number 2, future generation fund. An intergenerational saving fund is a fund for the next generation. This kind of fund is established by several nations in order to have enough resources to cover the rising costs associated with the aging population. Pressure on the government budget in the future is lessened as a result. Number 3, Reserve Investment Fund. The fund in the Reserve Investment Fund are set aside for investing, which distinguishes it from other type of sovereign fund. The main objective of the account is to raise money for high yield, long-term investments. Number 4, Pension Reserve Fund. Fund set aside to pay for nation pensions. System is known as a pension reserve fund. With such a system, the place paying for pension is no longer solely the responsibility of the government's budget. A pension reserve fund is not present in every nation, despite its importance. It occurs more frequently in nations with aging population and low fertility rates. Taking example of Norway, the government pension funds, globals, is also known as oil fund, was established in 1990 that aims to invest the surplus revenues of Norwegians petroleum sector. Today, Norway owns over US dollar 1.19 trillion in asset and hold 1.3% of all the world listed companies, over 70 countries worldwide. This has benefited the Norwegians with vast developments and welfare that include free education in public universities. With the same blueprint, Sarawak can do the same. We can develop our beloved lands, especially in the rurals, and provide better future for our upcoming generations. The leadership of Yang Berhormat Premier of Sarawak has been recognized and endorsed globally, with him always seeking for betterments for our future generation. He realized that we cannot solely depend on our petroleum and natural gas resources. Hence, he is leading Sarawak towards sustainable energies, which are eco-friendlier and greener. If we take a close look at the world hydrogen energy map, we can see a small dot which is located in Sarawak, besides Singapore and Brunei, where we can proudly say that we know and are aware of the global climate change crisis. I couldn't be prouder of this. Recognition of Sarawak's excellent approach of the green hydrogen is proven when Premier of Sarawak was invited to share his views on climate change and the broader use of green hydrogen, which took place on last October 10 in Japan. He is also aware that Sarawak has all the potential to generate income from other sources aside of our natural gas and petroleum. He emphasized that Sarawak potential in producing alternative biofuel from algae, and this supports the idea of establishing our own sovereign fund, since pursuing it definitely possible due to revenues generated. GPS is a political party that really fight for Sarawak and consists of members that firmly hold to party principles. All this new innovation of ideas to generate more revenues for Sarawak align with GPS manifesto that was launched during 12th Sarawak state election. To be more precise, we are establishing our own Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund. GPS government under the leadership of Yang Berhormat Tan Sri Abang Jo. Premier of Sarawak is fulfilled 5th, 6th, 7th, 11th, and 44 manifesto points, namely to propel Sarawak towards high income and developed state by 2030, to reduce income disparity through creation of more job opportunities, to eradicate urban and rural poverty, to increase Sarawak income and sources of revenue, and establish sovereign wealth fund. We are the government that fulfill our promises to the people. We are the government that walk the talk. However, Tan Sri Dato' Ahmad Speaker, making it success is far from easy. Taking Singapore as a nearest example, the Government of Singapore Investment Corporation, GIC, success are due to the ability to create a first-class institution based meritocratic principle. This includes involvement in top-notch team that's highly competent professionals, reinforced with both local and international talents. This means in order to set a Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Fund, future fund, we have to do the same. Highly skilled key players should be properly selected and chosen, whether local or international, as this group will be responsible in maneuvering Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund directions on the world fast-changing financial landscape and take it forward as opportunity arises for Sarawak. Apart from that, Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund should approach the investment decision methodically, carefully, and consciously. It's important that it neither adopt a risk-free mindset nor pursues maximal return at any reckless risk. The government should establish the risk parameter, and Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund should develop and oversee the diversified mix of various investment classes, whether short-term or long-term, to obtain the best result within this constraint to bring betterments for future of Sarawak. With this important factor being carefully considered, I strongly believe this will be an open door to all wonders of Sarawak under the leadership of Yang Berhormat Premier of Sarawak. We can see that we are on the right track and the bright future is ahead of us. Not only Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund will result in more revenues for development, just like Norway and Singapore. It will also bring more job opportunities, strengthens the economy, eradicates poverty, better and free education for our future generation, and last but not least, building trust from both local and foreign investors. Tan Sri Dato' Speaker, it is with my greatest hope that Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund will act as the greatest vehicle for our excess financial reserve to be invested in, provided that we follow the proven successful model of Norway's government pension fund, and also following the bold step done by Singapore, GIC, with the sole aim to adequately care for ourselves while watching out for the welfare and prosperity of our children and grandchildren, and also for future generations who are yet to be born. Tan Sri Dato' Speaker, with that, I strongly beg to support this bill. Thank you.
Member for Kedua.
Saya dulu.
Your mic should be okay.
Terima kasih Yang Berhormat Tan Sri Dato' Ahmad Speaker kerana memberi peluang dan ruang untuk saya terlibat sama dalam perbahasan rang Undang-Undang Sarawak, iaitu Sarawak Sovereign Fund Board Bill 2022 pada petang ini. Sarawak first, dahulukan Sarawak. Yang Berhormat Tan Sri Dato' Ahmad Speaker, I rise to support the enactment of the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund, Bill 2022. It is a very comprehensive and a well-crafted bill which contains 10 parts, 61 clauses, and 4 schedules. Every part and clauses and all the schedules are all very well refined and well defined. For this great wisdom and visionary initiative, I rise to salute and congratulate the Right Honorable Premier for this historic initiative. It takes a good candidate to win the election and becoming a leader. It takes a great leader to be able to come up with wise and visionary initiatives. Congratulations, Yang Amat Berhormat Premier. Indeed, this reflects your true and very visionary leadership. Tan Sri Dato' Amat Speaker, let me begin with this quote by Warren Buffett. Do not save what is left after spending, but spend what is left after saving. The establishment of the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund Bill 2022 is very timely and introduced with an honest objective to make sure that the future of our generation, your children, and my children are safeguarded and prioritized with utmost importance. By definition, Sovereign Wealth Fund is a state-owned investment fund that invests in real and financial assets such as stocks, bonds, real estates, precious metals, or in alternative investments such as private equity fund or hedge funds. Sovereign wealth funds invest globally. Most SWF or sovereign wealth funds are funded by revenues from commodity exports or from foreign exchange reserve held by the central bank. Sovereign wealth funds are typically created when governments have budgetary surpluses and have little or no international debt. Some sovereign wealth funds may be held by a central bank which accumulates the fund in the course of its management of a nation banking system. This type of fund is usually a major economic and fiscal importance. Other sovereign wealth funds are simply the state savings that are invested by various entities for the purpose of investment return and that may not have a significant role in fiscal management. Yang Berhormat Tan Sri Dato' Amat Speaker Sir, I would like to fully support this grand initiative of enacting this bill called the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Fund, Wealth Future Fund Bill 2022 for the following reasons and justifications. In doing so, I would like to pose these few questions in this august house. Firstly, do we care about the future of the state and her people, especially our children and our future generations? As for me, the answer is yes, I care. Secondly, the government of Sarawak, do the government of Sarawak has the saving ability? Yes, we have the ability. Yang Berhormat Dato' Amat Speaker Sir, on the 21st November 2022, this august house was told by the Right Honorable Premier in his budget speech for year 2023 on page 23 under Budget Surplus 2023. Quote, I am pleased to inform this august house that with the projected revenue of 11.035 billion ringgit Malaysia and total ordinary expenditure of ringgit Malaysia 10.79 billion, the state budget is expected to generate a surplus of ringgit Malaysia 238 million, unquote. Yang berhormat Dato' Ahmad Speaker, sir, as for me, when I have that little money in my pocket, I place them with ASB. There is a Malay saying that sounds like this: sikit-sikit, lama-lama jadi bukit. So for the state government to initiate this Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund should be a very good instrument to manage and invest this surplus. We want our fund to grow, to enable us to maximize our capital, and at the same time to enable us to mitigate the impact of our depletable natural resources, especially our oil and gas that we are highly dependent on. This surplus needs to be managed properly so that the surplus will further generate income for our future generation. Thirdly, are we alone or are we the only country with this initiative trying to have this Sovereign Wealth Fund, Future Fund? As for me, the answer is no. There are many other countries who have moved ahead of us and are very much ahead of us in this Sovereign Wealth Fund. Other countries such as Norway, via the Government Pension Fund of Norway, United States of America, via their permanent funds such as Alabama Trust Fund, Texas Permanent School Fund, and many others. China, via the China Investment Corporation. Singapore, such as the Government of Singapore Investment Corporation and Temasek Holdings. Brunei, through their Brunei Investment Agency or BIA. Korea, via the Korean Investment Corporation or BIC. And our very own country, we have created this Khazanah National. There are many other countries who have created their own sovereign wealth fund and have amassed huge wealth for their citizens and their future generation. Tan Sri Dato' Ahmad Speaker, sir, with these three reasons and justifications, I stand firm to support this Sovereign Wealth Future Fund Bill 2023. But before I take my seat, allow me to have two pantun. The first one, it sounds like this. Kapal api muatan syarat, masuk muara menuju kota. Hina besi kerana karat, hina manusia tidak berharta. Persidangan yang kedua, persidangan ini kali ke-11 kita berdebat hingga ke petang. Yang amat berhormat Premier nang ada kelas, masa depan rakyat sentiasa diperjuangkan. Sekian, terima kasih.
Member for Lingga.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Salam sejahtera dan salam Sarawakku sayang. First, I would like to thank Tan Sri Dato' Ahmad Speaker for giving me the opportunity to participate in the debate of the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund Board Bill in this August House today. Tan Sri Dato' Ahmad Speaker, on November 19, 2022, the GPS party for the first time was contested in the 15th general election and won an impressive victory with 23 of the 31 contested seats. Alhamdulillah and well done. This proves that GPS leadership is the best choice as a party that continues to uphold and fight for the rights of the people of Sarawak. GPS, Sarawak first. To nurture Sarawak first, Yang Amat Berhormat Premier has anticipated a sovereign wealth fund board for the continued development of the state, the people, and future generations. In realizing the creation of the fund, a corporate body is to be established to manage the assets in the fund in a professional and transparent manner. The corporate body to be known as the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund Board comprised of experts and professionals in the field of finance and investment. Tan Sri Dato' Ahmad Speaker, as we understand, a sovereign wealth fund is a state-owned investment fund comprised of money generated by the government, often derived from a country's surplus reserves. According to Yang Amat Berhormat Premier's speech on 2023 state budget, Sarawak is expected to generate a surplus of ringgit Malaysia 238 million in year 2023. With the surplus, it is an opportunity for the government to preserve the proceeds of resource wealth for future state economic strategic plan. Referring to Section 4 and 5, there shall be two types of funds established under this bill. One is the investment account. Second is the endowment fund account. I would like to emphasize on Section 8, bracket 4, subsection bracket 2, bracket C, withdrawal from the endowment account may only be made for the purpose of transfer into the state consolidated fund and thereupon to be held under a trust fund established under Section 4 of the Financial Procedure Contingencies and Trust Funds Ordinance 1963, Cap 37, for the following purposes. Number one, the education of people of the state in statutory institutions or such other institutions as be approved by the Majlis MESYUARAT Kerajaan Negeri. Second, the improvement of the standard of living of people of Sarawak based on socio-economic needs. Third, the development of the talents, expertise, and the entrepreneurial skills of the Sarawak. And the fourth, such other purpose as may be determined by the Majlis Kerajaan Negeri in notification to publish in the Gazette and laid before the Dewan Undangan Negeri. Tan Sri Dato' Ahmad Speaker, the reason I would like to focus on this section because as I represent the youth, especially in the rural and coastal areas who are in dire need of educational assistance to continue their studies from the lower level to the higher level. I highly praise the moves taken by the Sarawak state government, which is working hard to restore the dilapidated schools in the rural areas, particularly for the well-being of the children of Sarawak and the teachers in the schools. Furthermore, the Sarawak state government has also offered various sponsorships at UTS, Sentex, PPKS, which open opportunities for B40 students to further their studies. Hopefully, gaining from Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund, it will provide more prospects to our youth and future generations to have various scholarships, sponsorships, or even better, free education in the future. Since the outbreak of COVID-19 in 2020 until now, the whole country is facing a financial crisis and taking steps to get out of the country's economic discrepancy. According to Vincent Mars and Paul Downs' article, 3rd March 2021, the COVID-19 pandemic has shone a spotlight on the need for a country to have emergency resource to call upon. So what exactly is the case for not having a sovereign wealth fund? This is the right time. As we recall, the Sarawak state government has contributed a large portion of aid to the community, students, small and medium traders or vendors during the economic turmoil due to post-COVID-19 through BKSS 1.0 to 9.0. That's proven our state needs to be prepared to deal with unexpected economic turbulence and potential future depletion of state natural resources. With this Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund Board, it can ensure economic stability in the long term and essentially the welfare of the people of the state of Sarawak can be implemented continuously. Tan Sri Dato' Amar Speaker, before I end my speech, I would like to share a quote which can inspire all of us to work hard for the continued development of the state, the people, and future generations of Sarawak. Quote, success is not final. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. End quote. This quote by Winston S. Churchill. I hereby fully support Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund Board Bill. Thank you.
Member for Balingyan.
Terima kasih Tan Sri Dato' Amar Speaker. Terlebih dahulu saya ingin mengucapkan jutaan terima kasih kerana diberi peluang dan peluang untuk membahas perkara mengenai penubuhan dana kedaulatan kekayaan Sarawak atau Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund di Dewan yang mulia ini dalam mesyuarat ketiga penggal pertama Persidangan Dewan Undangan Negeri Dun Sarawak. Visi dan aspirasi yang amat berhormat Premier ini adalah yang terbaik untuk generasi yang akan datang. Jadi pengenalan dana kedaulatan kekayaan. Penubuhan dana kedaulatan kekayaan sememangnya menjadi satu tarikan yang amat signifikan apabila banyak negara di dunia membuka dana-dana dan melabur di dalam syarikat-syarikat gergasi dengan aset-aset mereka secara lebih telus dari yang lain. Ianya telah membawa satu kegusaran buat semua bagaimana dana sebegini boleh memberi impak ke atas ekonomi global. Oleh yang demikian adalah sangat penting untuk kita memahami secara tepat apa sebenarnya dana kedaulatan kekayaan ini dan bagaimana ianya tertubuh pada mulanya. Pulangan yang harus dipikirkan. Dana kedaulatan kekayaan dilihat sebagai satu cara sesebuah negara melabur modal lebihan ke dalam pelbagai pasaran dan pelaburan. Kedua, dana tersebut dianggap oleh kebanyakan negara sebagai cara menyimpan keuntungan yang terakru untuk kegunaan ekonomi negara dan rakyatnya. Ketiga, fungsi utama dana digunakan untuk menstabil ekonomi negara dan mempelbagaikan sumber kekayaan untuk generasi yang akan datang. Keempat, kemunculan dana-dana kekayaan ini dilihat sebagai pembangunan penting di dalam pelaburan antarabangsa. Motif penubuhan dana ini berbeza mengikut negara. UAE menghasilkan pendapatan yang sangat besar dengan ekspor minyaknya dan mencari kaedah bagaimana mengawal lebihan simpanan dari risiko berasaskan simpanan minyak. Dengan hal yang demikian, mereka menyimpan sebahagian dari wang hasil berkenaan ke dalam dana kedaulatan kekayaan. Sejarah dana kedaulatan kekayaan. Dana kedaulatan kekayaan yang pertama bermula dalam sekitar tahun 1950-an. Ianya muncul sebagai cara penyelesaian bagi sebuah negara yang mempunyai bajet lebihan. Pada tahun 1953, Lembaga Pelaburan Kuwait telah menumbuhkan dana mereka yang pertama untuk melabur lebihan hasil minyak mereka, manakala Lembaga Pelabuhan Abu Dhabi ditubuhkan pada tahun 1976 dan Perbadanan Pelaburan Kerajaan Singapura dalam tahun 1981. Kerajaan Norway pula menubuhkan dana pencen mereka pada tahun 1990. Di dalam beberapa dekad yang lalu, saiz dan jumlah dana kekayaan ini telah meningkat secara dramatik. Mengikut SWF atau Sovereign Wealth Fund institusi, terdapat lebih dari 91 dana kekayaan dengan aset terkumpul hampir 8.2 trilion dalam tahun 2020. Kategori dana kekayaan. Dana kekayaan terbahagi kepada dua kategori, yakni dana kekayaan komoditi yang dibiayai melalui ekspor komoditi, manakala dana kekayaan bukan komoditi dibayai dengan menggunakan reserve pertukaran asing dari lebihan akaun semasa. Kemana dana dilabur? Dana ini boleh dilabur di dalam kelas aset yang luas seperti bond kerajaan, equity, pelaburan langsung asing dan menggunakan pelbagai strategi pelaburan. Ada yang melabur di dalam aset kewangan senarai awam dan sebahagian yang lain pula di dalam kesemua kelas-kelas aset utama. Dana kekayaan ini juga mengambil langkah kawalan yang berbeza apabila melabur di dalam sebuah syarikat. Ada yang meletak jumlah share yang terhad dan mengenakan kawalan dalam pelbagai portfolio dan mematuhi standard etika. Sebahagian pula mengambil pendekatan lebih aktif dengan membeli pegangan lebih besar di dalam syarikat. Perbahasan antarabangsa. Dana kedaulatan kekayaan mewakili sebahagian besar ekonomi global. Saiz dan impak yang berpotensi dari dana ini ke atas perdagangan antarabangsa membawa kepada bangkangan yang besar dan kritikan melonjak selepas pelaburan yang penuh kontroversi di Amerika Serikat dan Europe. Sewaktu krisis melibatkan pinjaman gadai janji dalam tahun 2006 dan 2008, dana kedaulatan kekayaan ini telah membantu Western Bank Citigroup, Merrill Lynch, UBS dan Morgan Stanley. Ini membawa kepada kebimbangan bahawa negara-negara asing mendapat kawalan lebih ke atas institusi kewangan domestik dan digunakan sebagai kawalan atas sebab politik. Kebimbangan ini terus membawa kepada pelindungan pelaburan dan berpotensi meranapkan ekonomi global dengan menghalang pelaburan mata wang dolar yang bernilai. Ramai pemimpin politik dan kewangan di Amerika Serikat dan Europe menegaskan pentingnya memantau dan mengawal selia dana ini. Pemimpin politik pula menekan bahawa dana ini membawa ancaman kepada keselamatan nasional dan ketidaktelusan, menambah lagi kontroversi. Amerika Serikat menyuarakan kebimbangan ini dengan meluluskan Akta Pelaburan Asing dan Keselamatan Nasional 2007 yang mana membawa kawalan ketat apabila kerajaan asing atau entiti kerajaan sendiri membuat belian aset kepunyaan Amerika Serikat. Kuasa Barat mengawal akan kebenaran penubuhan dana ini dan memerlukan lebih ketelusan. Namun tiada petunjuk jelas bahawa dana ini beroperasi di bawah kawalan politik atau strategi bermotif. Oleh yang demikian, kebanyakan negara kini mula berlembut dan menerima pelabur-pelabur. Tan Sri Dato' Amar Speaker, berdasarkan rujukan yang diperolehi dan dengan huraian di atas, saya yakin dan percaya adalah tepat pada waktunya untuk Sarawak menubuhkan dana kekayaan kedaulatan Sarawak ataupun Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund berpandukan pendapatan hasil negeri di mana Sarawak adalah kedua terkaya di Malaysia dalam hasil sumber ekonominya. Hasil Sarawak yang dijana melalui sumber gas asli, petroleum, balak, kelapa sawit dan sumber ekonomi baru seperti sektor perkilangan elektronik dan bioteknologi boleh digunakan bagi mengukuhkan penubuhan tabung ini. Kita harapkan dengan adanya kerajaan negeri yang stabil di bawah pemerintahan GPS yang universal, bebas dan berintegriti, lebih banyak syarikat gegasi yang akan bertapak dan melabur di Sarawak. Kesimpulannya, apa yang lebih penting adalah dana kekayaan kedaulatan Sarawak, Sarawak Sovereign Fund ini nanti mestilah dikawal selia secara ketat dan penuh ketelusan. Visi dan aspirasi yang amat berhormat Premier harus kita semua sokong. Dengan ini saya mohon menyokong. Terima kasih.
Member for Bawang Asan. Use this mic.
Thank you, Yang Berhormat Tan Sri Dato' Amar Speaker, for allowing me to participate in the debate of this bill and to support this bill, the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund. As we all know, and as we have been told by Yang Amat Berhormat the Premier, that a sovereign wealth fund is a state-owned fund or state-owned investment fund operated and managed on behalf of the people, comprising of money generated by the government, often derived from the country's surplus fund. The fund is to be invested or globally in real and financial assets such as stocks, bonds, real estates, precious metals, or in alternative investments such as private equity fund or hedge fund. The fund can be of several forms. The fund can be of stabilization wealth fund, which are created to reduce the volatility of the government revenue, to counter the boom-bust cycles, adverse effects on government spending and the state economy. The fund can also be of saving wealth fund or endowment fund, which is to be built up for future generations. They must be committed to certain rules, such as accumulation rule, what portion of the revenue can be spent or saved, withdrawal rule, when the government can withdraw the fund, and investment rule, where revenue can be reinvested in assets. We all know that Yang Amat Berhormat the Premier and his delegation make a few overseas trips to study the feasibility of setting up such sovereign fund and how best the fund can be set up and managed. I think all of us must applaud Yang Amat Berhormat the Premier for taking such learning process, learning trips before presenting the bill today in this DEWAN. Normally, the sovereign wealth fund, in whatever form, is set up by countries with mature economies and large reserves. Sarawak, of course, is a developing country with rather small surplus fund. But it is good to start somewhere, to start small. I think credit must go to Yang Amat Berhormat Premier for being visionary enough to undertake such a challenge. The Premier and his delegation traveled to UK, Norway, and Singapore to learn about the models used in these countries with which to operate such sovereign fund. Yang Amat Berhormat the Premier also led a delegation to meet the officials at the International Forum of Sovereign Wealth Funds, IFSWF, and PricewaterhouseCoopers in London to get to know more about these highly complex finances of such a fund. And therefore, in front of us today is a highly comprehensive all-encompassing bill covering 66 pages. I think this is one of the longest bills drafted I've ever seen since I was an adun in this house. And therefore, I have nothing much to say about the constitution of the bill, which has covered all aspects of the management principles and the management strategies. There are these built-in check and balance at all levels. It has also been emphasized that Sarawak Sovereign Fund will be professionally managed by a board of directors from different professional backgrounds based on the Santiago principles. The 24 Santiago principles and practices, I will recall, are drafted in 2008 by the International Working Group of Sovereign Funds to set out a common global set of international standards regarding transparency, independence, and accountability in the way the sovereign funds should be managed. Tan Sri Dato' Amar Speaker, revenue re-engineering was first started by Yang Amat Berhormat Premier with the introduction of 5% sales tax imposed on oil and gas. Now we also learned that in this new budget speech just delivered yesterday by the Premier, introduction of a standard dividend policy which requires state GLCs to declare an annual dividend of at least 10% of its profit after tax. Then there is also the potential of new source of income through carbon trading. All these measures may give the state extra fund. Earlier on, I also came to know that, or in the budget speech by the Premier, that we have submitted to the federal government our formula to review the special grants for Sarawak. And I hope this special grant can be increased so that we can have extra fund, and some of which can be transferred to our sovereign fund. I think we should also negotiate to get 20% of the oil revenue from the federal government. As it is from 2018, we only get US 7 billion out of 141 billion. Now this is just 5%. If it is 20%, redistribution would have given us US 28 billion. I think all these we should pursue so that we can have more fund, not only for development purposes, but also fund that can be transferred to our sovereign fund. Tan Sri Dato' Amar Speaker, our state sovereign fund may have been modeled after the government pension fund Global of Norway. Of course, this is the largest sovereign wealth fund, rightly recognized with the highest standards of governance. However, the Norway Government Pension Fund Global suffer a loss of 653 billion Norwegian kroner, which is equivalent to 75.7 US billion in just the first quarter of 2022, equivalent to a minus 0.45% return. Also, the Norway Fund sustained a loss of 1.68 trillion Norwegian kroner, US 174 billion in the first half of 2022, as stock markets broadly saw a tumultuous 6 months. It must be pointed out that the risks involved in investments such as stocks and bonds could react violently to global recession fears. Singapore, of course, has Temasek Holdings Private Limited, owned by the Singapore government to operate its sovereign wealth fund, incorporated on 25th June 1974. Temasek owns and manages a net portfolio of 403 billion US dollars as of 2022, with 37 billion Singapore dollars divested and 61 billion US dollars Singapore dollars invested during the year. The government of Singapore also owned GIC Private Limited, incorporated in 1981, which manages about US 881 billion, which is equivalent to 1 trillion Singapore dollars assets as of 2022. In mid-2022, Temasek reported a sharp drop in return and warned that it would be extremely cautious about new investments amid economic downturns, of course. At the same time, Singapore GIC also warned of profound uncertainties as inflation rises. And therefore, Tan Sri Dato' Amar Speaker, even when the funds are well managed, they are still subjected to market risks, resulting in the loss of wealth of the state. We must therefore be very careful. We must therefore be wary of such market risks and be on guard against such risks when managing our state sovereign wealth fund. It should also be noted that Semenanjung, Malaysia, also had two sovereign wealth funds, and there are issues, many issues surrounding both funds. One fund, Khazanah Nasional, was set up nearly 3 decades ago and had 106 billion ringgit of assets under the management as of the end of 2021. It is supposed to operate with the framework of a clearly defined mandate that is aligned with national objectives. The other fund, Scandal ridden, One Malaysia Development Berhad, 1MDB, which was declared insolvent in 2018. The fund is now under global scrutiny for multi-billion losses. Even Khazanah is not necessarily a good template for good governance either. Khazanah has often been used by the government to bail out or to prop up the local politically connected companies, and so adding burdens to it and reducing its returns. And so, Tan Sri Dato' Amma, Speaker, the issues of transparency and responsibilities are at stake when it comes to managing the State Sovereign Wealth Fund. And so once our State Sovereign Fund is set up, we should never allow the fund to be politically manipulated. It must be managed by a professional group of well-qualified professionals with the highest degree of integrity, transparency, and accountability. With those remarks, Tan Sri Dato' Amma, Speaker, I support the bill presented by Yang Amat Berhormat the Premier. Thank you.
Member for Pelagus.
Thank you, Dato' Amma Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to participate in debating the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Fund Board Bill 2022, which was presented just now by our Right Honourable Premier, Yang Berhormat Datuk Tinggi Tan Sri Dr. Abang Haji Abdul Rahman Zuhairi bin Tun Abang Haji Upeng, and he had deliberated over the importance of this bill and how it will be managed. The premier vision of setting up a Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Fund Board is indeed a boon to this state. He is a visionary who not only care about the well-being of the people of Sarawak now, but also has a foresight to ensure that the people of this wonderful state will have a buffer that will protect them financially in the short, mid, and long term. It is indeed a bond for all of us to have a premier who has both courageous and a visionary. Thank you, Dato' Petinggi Premier. Sovereign Wealth Fund has been around for many years, having first started in Kuwait with the Kuwait Investment Authority established in 1953 to invest excess wealth revenues. 2 years later, Kiribati, a small island nation with limited resources, created a fund to hold its revenue reserve. Even though the Sovereign Wealth Fund has a long history, nothing much happened in the beginning until the involvement of these three funds coming into play much later. That is the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority in 1976, Singapore Government Investment Corporation 1981, Norway Government Pension Fund 1990. Over the last few decades, the size and number of sovereign wealth funds had increased dramatically according to the Sovereign Wealth Fund Institute. There are more than 91 sovereign wealth funds with cumulative asset amount to nearly $8.2 trillion in 2020. The goal of the Sovereign Wealth Fund is to protect a country's wealth and invest it properly for future use in case of an economic crisis, protect the national economy and state budget from risk due to export fluctuation, maintain the tenets of integrational equality after mineral resources have been depleted, and increase yield from foreign exchange reserve via investment. I hope that Sarawak Sovereign Health Fund that we are setting up now will consider all these factors and also delve further into other innovative objectives to safeguard our beloved state well-being financially for the generation to come. Our beloved Premier has reiterated in no uncertain term that this fund is managed by Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Fund Board will be left untouched to grow for the next 20 years. And I applaud this far-sighted and vision for this. Tan Sri Dato' Ahmad Speaker, it is imperative to realize that Sarawak is definitely losing her natural resources in time in case of oil and gas income, minerals, and other resources that nature has blessed us abundantly, but not perpetually. Setting up of this sovereign health fund in our state right now is indeed a clever and important move by GPS government led by Yang Amat Berhormat our Premier. The learned legislator to ensure that the financial future of our state is accumulative and sustainable. In this August House, I wish to say a few things that may be construed as I being a devil advocate, but let's do it right and the first time, so that we will hail as a legend and go down in history as a visionary leader. Sovereign Wealth Fund has not always been a boon to the country. Like all investment instruments, SWF is also exposed to all natural, financial, and man-made vagaries. According to the Star newspaper, reported published on Monday, 17 October 2022, I quote, with the turmoil in market, some sovereign wealth fund or state-owned investment fund are having a tough time to achieve return from real and financial assets. There is a risk we have not seen, and the worst yet, one Norwegian bank investment management CEO, Nicole Tangen, as a Norway Wealth Fund, which is the world's largest SWF, swung into a 14.4% loss, or US 174 billion, 818 billion in the first half of 2022, both in stock and bond, which was unusual. The golden age of assets price inflation is a good as over, said former Inter-Pacific Security Head of Research Fong Teng Siu. Many SWF are aiming for net zero portfolio by 2050 or sooner. Tan Sri Dato' Ahmad Speaker, we have read many advantages on the SWF as reported in the Sarawak Tribune on June 10, 2022, when our Premier has listed the many benefits of this fund. Whilst these advantages are real and tangible, it will be prudent for us to also avoid mistakes that have been made by some those SWF. In the paper published by the Indian researcher Sanitya Ponoka on 8 August 2022, she says that, and I quote, following are the disadvantages of sovereign wealth fund. Returns are volatile. SWF doesn't guarantee return. Foreign exchange rate can have an impact on SWF. Mismanagement of fund due to a lack of transparency and political interference. But on our part, sir, you have what they call it, designed and structured, structured this Sovereign Wealth Fund Board for the state independent investment to look into. I hope that when we are rolling out the plan for the setting up of this Sovereign Wealth Fund, these factors are taken into consideration. I wish to suggest that to safeguard and maintain the authenticity of this fund in line with the wishes and the vision of our Premier, I wish to suggest that the SWF fund must identify the exact source of income for the fund. Definitely is from oil and gas surplus. Surplus from our other income, derived revenue earner, surplus from our mineral sales, and even a portion of state sales tax, if suggested later. It must be managed by a team as already structured in the Sovereign Wealth Fund Board, identified from all over those single main objective to make Sovereign Wealth Fund grow. There should be no political interference, and they should work without fear or favor of political master. The fund management team only report to the State Legislative Assembly on a regular basis. The suggestion above may seem a little overboard, but I feel it is important or imperative that we do this so as to maintain its integrity and also allow the Sovereign Wealth Fund to achieve its goal for our Sarawak. On another note, I also wish to broach on the subject of asking the fund management team to devise some of its funds for the purpose of research and development and implementation of some future emerging areas. We are in the cusp of technology, and the world is now racing forward in this area of dazzling speed. Sarawak should tap into this area and position herself to be a serious player in near future. I wish to suggest, and whilst the team look at traditional investment portfolio like bond, real estate, stock, and foreign exchange, we should also consider investing in other areas. I feel that we not only look at possibly make the Sovereign Wealth Fund grow, we must also allow some portion of it, however small, to venture into other emerging areas to bolster the return and also to position Sarawak as a ready contender in the next decade of technological advances. I hope the member of this August House understand the gravity of this bill, and I hope that the fabulous beginning that we have started today will grow, flourish, and bear fruit before and beyond our imagination for all Sarawakian in the future. I hope this SWF will not only insulate our state from financial crisis like the COVID-19 pandemic, but also bolster our coffer so that we too can stand tall and proud in the eyes of the world. With this, Tan Sri Dato' Ahmad Speaker, I fully support this bill. Thank you very much.
Member for Katibas.
Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this debate. It is an honor and privilege to be standing here in this august house representing the people of Katibas to debate on this important subject of Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund. First, I would like to congratulate the Premier of Sarawak Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Patinggi Tan Sri Abang Haji Abdul Rahman Zohari bin Tun Datuk Abang Haji Openg for his outstanding performance in leading GPS in the 15th general election with landslide victory of 23 out of 31 seats. Let me put on record my gratitude to the people of Katibas for giving GPS candidate Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Alexander Nantalinggi their votes and subsequent opportunity to represent them in the Malaysian Parliament. People choose us as they believe we are competent, as we have a very far-sighted leadership of Yang Amat Berhormat Premier Abang Jo to lead a stable, harmonious, and prosperous Sarawak. This has been proven in GPS government excellence record in claiming our right in MA 63, SST, board member in...
Yang Berhormat, you focus on the sovereign fund.
Yep. The proposed establishment of Sarawak very own sovereign wealth future fund is another milestone achievement by our GPS team of leaders designed for the future generation of Sarawakians. It is a Sarawak-owned investment fund run on behalf of the people of Sarawak, comprising money generated by the government of Sarawak in the consolidated funds. The idea to set up a Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Fund by our far-sighted Yang Amat Berhormat Premier Abang Jo is a very important initiative for the long-term development of Sarawak, as to ensure economic prosperity and inclusive society so that the future generation would enjoy a fair share. Not only he, Yang Amat Berhormat Premier Abang Jo, share and care for the current population of Sarawak, also he extrapolate it to include the future population of Sarawak as we aspire to achieve a developed state as enshrined in our PCDS 2030. This initiative also provides economic transformation and diversified stream of revenue to drive Sarawak to another level in times to come. Sarawak is fortunate that it is endowed with abundant natural resources. If there is no proper control on the current rate of extraction, in no time our resource will diminish. We left nothing for future generation. As such, there is urgent need to address the depletion of our natural resource and income we derive from it to support future needs of Sarawak. Therefore, the bill we table in this August House on establishment of alternative source of income from Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund is timely. Yang Berhormat Tan Sri Dato' Ahmad Speaker, our Yang Amat Berhormat Premier Abang Jo once said the fund will also be targeting to provide free and quality education to Sarawakians and creating our capacity building by sending the state young talents to the world-renowned universities to pursue knowledge and skill. Over the last few decades, the size and number of sovereign wealth funds have increased dramatically. According to the Sovereign Wealth Fund Institutes, there are more than 91 sovereign wealth funds with accumulated assets amounting to nearly $8.2 trillion in 2020. Sovereign wealth funds represent a large and growing portion of the global economy. The size and potential impact that this fund could have on Sarawak international trade have led to considerable needs to address the issue of good governance and transparency. Despite measures and principles in Santiago Principles adopted to ensure good governance and transparency, however, attention needs also to be given to preempt some exogenous shock in the market which may cause negative impact on the funds, as experienced by Norway's sovereign fund, the largest in the world, had a loss of 1.68 trillion Norwegian kroner in the first half of the year 2022, as stock market more broadly saw a disorder in the first 6 months of this 2022. This was reported by CNBC August 17, 2022. Lessons learned from other countries should also be considered to protect its impacts on the fund itself, as well as that of Sarawak and its people as we move to the future. As a precautionary measure, the bill also must clearly define the level of risk, ethical standard, and some number of restrictions on speculative portfolio. Yang Berhormat Tan Sri Pertama Speaker, in light of the foregoing benefits the future generation will reap, I beg to support this bill. Thank you.
Member for Bukit Bergunang.
Thank you, Dr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to participate in debate on the Sarawak Sovereign.
Before you proceed, I'm sorry to interrupt. No honorable member must refer to honorable member by name. So you refer to Yang Amat Berhormat, the Premier of Sarawak. This is understanding Order 32, bracket 5. Yeah, proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Tan Sri Dr. Speaker. Foremost, I wish to congratulate and thank Yang Amat Berhormat, the Premier of Sarawak, for tabling a very important piece of bill, that is Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund Board Bill 2022 today. The bill is the brainchild of our Yang Amat Berhormat, the Premier, and the successful implementation will have a very significant impact on the future financial structure of the state economy. On one hand, the introduction of the bill is a manifestation of GPS government firm commitment and fulfillment of one of the many promises made in the GPS election manifesto. Tan Sri Dr. Speaker, I will not deliberate on detailed provision of the bill, which is very comprehensive, but will make general comment in support of the bill. Sovereign wealth funds are considered investment tools established to manage holding of national or state wealth for the benefit of the future generation. In present day, sovereign wealth funds are among the most important institutional investors in the global financial market and similar to other financial institutions. And for the past 2 decades, there was commodity price boom, a global imbalance between saving and investment in large countries. So there was massive accumulation of foreign reserve assets in some countries, thus led to sovereign wealth funds becoming significant players on the international financial market. It was reported in SHH Conference 2021. Most of these funds have been established in relatively unstable region of East Asia and Pacific with 19 sovereign wealth funds, Middle East and North Africa, 18 sovereign wealth funds, and 13 sovereign wealth funds operating in Europe and Central Asia, 12 in North America, and 10 each in Latin America, Caribbean region, and Sub-Saharan African with 12 sovereign wealth funds. It was reported the largest amount of sovereign wealth fund investment is being channeled to USA and China. In 2018, sovereign wealth fund invested more than US 80 billion, with 82% of the value for 5 countries, and that is USA, China, Netherlands, Australia, and France. This shows the growing importance played by the sovereign wealth fund in global finance. Therefore, our visionary Yang Muhammad Premier have made a brilliant decision to set up sovereign wealth fund for the benefit of the state and its people. And sovereign wealth fund have become true active investor in the national financial market. And I believe SWF, in short, can in one way or another help to preserve the state autonomy and sovereignty per se through the power of finance. Tan Sri Dato' Ahmad Speaker, the underlying reason for the creation of SWF had been clearly explained by the Yang Muhammad, the Premier. All funds have their own goals, which are mutually complementary and can change over time according to specific needs of the given economy and the situation in the financial market. If a country has excess financial resources and would like to be active in the financial market with reasonably good return, I believe funding and sovereign wealth fund is the best option. This particularly so on having SWF processes properly established, just like the introduction of the bill today, which clearly spelled out the processes and operating mechanism. I'm sure the fund would be managed by investment specialists and should utilize a long-term investment standpoint. To this end, I'm pleased to note that one of the important clauses in the bill is the establishment of the board, and secondly, approval by way of a resolution passed by DEWAN UNDANGAN NEGERI for withdrawal of fund from the state consolidated fund. I am of the opinion that managing government assets in this manner appears to be more advantageous over the long term than maintaining foreign exchange reserve, which is subject to market forces and fluctuation. SWF should be able to stabilize the country economy through diversification, such as investment in financial assets, real estate, and even precious metal. And with the above short comment, Yang Ahmad Muhammad, the Premier, is making a brilliant move by tabling the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund Board, Bill 2020, and I wish to express my full support to the bill. Thank you.
Member for Baklalan.
For giving me the opportunity to participate in this debate pertaining to the proposed Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund Board, Bill 2022. Mr. Speaker, I was very glad to see this bill on the table on Monday, as the idea of a sovereign wealth fund had been suggested many years ago by my honorable friend for Batu Lintang and myself in this DEWAN. The objectives stated in the bill, i.e., and I quote, to safeguard and invest monies in the fund for the sustainable growth thereof in the interest of the state and the future generations of the peoples of Sarawak, unquote, is commendable. The state leaders and guardians of the fund must never lose sight of this objective. Mr. Speaker, the Premier was reported to have said on the previous occasion that the establishment and implementation of the fund would be based on the best practices of the sovereign wealth funds of Norway, Singapore, and the United Kingdom. I understand that the government had brought in the Norwegian Wealth Fund to advise on Sarawak's model. That was a prudent move, as Norway is known to have the largest sovereign wealth fund called the Government Pension Fund Global. Mr. Speaker, our oil and gas reserves will not last forever. So it is a good move to set up this fund to preserve and multiply our God-given wealth for our children and the future generation to come. I just wish to sound several cautionary notes. Firstly, the appointment of the members of the board must be based solely on merit, as they will be entrusted to administer this potentially huge amount of reserves for Sarawak and Sarawakians. As custodians of the fund, they will be given wide-ranging powers to deal with the funds. Mr. Speaker, I note the criteria set out in Clause 12, which are as should be, but sub-clause E is too general and wide, especially when it is preceded by the word or, and any other expertise or experience which is highly relevant to the effective performance of the function of the board is arguably subjective. This subclause must not be used as a loophole for the appointment of otherwise unqualified members to the board. Mr. Speaker, it is imperative that the board must be solid and highly experienced in the field set out in Clause 12A, subclause A to D. Similarly, it is crucial that the members of the Investment Committee, Risk Committee, Remuneration Committee, Internal Audit Committee, and Sharia Committee be professional who are top-rated in their fields of expertise. No political appointments should be made to these committees. Also, the selection of the Chief Executive Officer must be done with great care. Ideally, the CEO should have a proven track record of managing sovereign wealth fund companies or well-established mutual fund companies. Mr. Speaker, a position in the board must not be used as reward for support or golden handshakes, such as in the case of many appointments to GLCs and the like. Let us not be coy to admit that this practice is the norm in this country. Secondly, we must not allow the reserves in this fund to be used to fund government projects. The Norwegian practice is that all oil revenues are transferred directly into the wealth fund, which is then invested. As I understand it, our oil royalties are deposited into the consolidated fund, and the initial appropriation and annual appropriations as authorized by the DUN are to be transferred to the sovereign wealth fund from the consolidated fund. We should be clear in the guidelines that the whole amount of oil royalties and taxes must be transferred to the fund, and that any spending should only be from the returns on investment. Only in this way can we make sure the reserves are increasing instead of being depleted, and will continue to be Sarawak's reserves for the future. Mr. Speaker, on withdrawals from the endowment fund, Clause 8, Clause 4, A to E, while specifying the purposes for which such withdrawals may be made, can be said to be quite general in the wording of the sub-clauses. Again, clear guidelines and limiting principles must be drawn up in this regard so that the fund is not used for government projects. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I urge that there be minimal government interference in the administration of the fund, and that it be left in the hands of proven experts and professional fund managers and investment specialists. Annual reporting on the finances of the fund must be forthcoming and completely transparent. We owe it to the people of Sarawak to ensure this Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Fund does not go the way of Terengganu Investment Authority, which became 1MDB, the infamous vehicle of corruption for the disgraced 6th Prime Minister of this country, who is serving time in prison for his crimes. On that sober note, I wish to register my support for this bill, Mr. Speaker. Much obliged. Thank you.
Member for Kota Sentosa.
Tan Sri Dato' Amar Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to debate on this Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund Board Bill. Sovereign wealth funds are not new. They have existed since 1953 and are special investment funds owned by a government. Sovereign wealth funds have engendered a new phenomenon, which is the redistribution of funds from private into public funds. Given the increasing role of sovereign wealth funds in strategic sectors of any economy, A better control and governance is indispensable. In particular, we must learn from international institutions who have set in place principles of good governance that could be applied to our Sovereign Wealth Future Fund. They are the principles of corporate governance applied to public entities. Tan Sri Dato' Amar Speaker, the resources of sovereign wealth funds are made of commercial surpluses coming from the taxes collected from the export of natural resources or of manufactured products, or by budgetary surpluses. Thus, we have a distinction between commodity and non-commodity funds. From my observation, it appears that the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund comes under the category of countries rich in natural resources, where we have a rent-seeking economy based on a major portion of our revenue coming from natural resources. Due to volatility of commodity prices and continued depletion of our natural resources, there is thus a need and timely for the creation of a sovereign wealth fund for Sarawak to invest the surplus generated during periods of high commodity prices and through dedicated budgetary savings by our Sarawak government. Tan Sri Dato' Amar Speaker, at this juncture, I would like to congratulate the Premier of Sarawak, the Honourable Member from Kedua, for walking the talk and his far-sighted vision through the establishment of this Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund, in accordance with paragraph 34 of GPS Manifesto for the 12th Sarawak General Elections. Janji ditunai. This fund will secure our future by contributing to Sarawak's advancement and long-term sustainability of Sarawak's development towards 2030 and beyond. Tan Sri Dato' Amar Speaker, it is indeed prudent for the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund to have three main objectives, which are to serve to stabilize our revenue from the export of our natural resources and commodities. The Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund can help fight against price volatility of natural resources and commodity prices, because fluctuation of prices can result in an imbalance of our Sarawak budget. Number two, to serve as an intergenerational saving fund. The saving fund can be made to constitute savings for future generations by distributing the revenues from non-renewable natural resources between the different generations. And lastly, to serve as a development fund by making strategic investments. They can be holdings with state participation and act as a sword arm of the state. Our Sovereign Wealth Future Fund can finance infrastructure, invest in strategic sectors for the continued development of Sarawak. Tan Sri Dato' Amar Speaker, the Honourable Member from Ba'Kelalan mentioned 1MDB. One Malaysia Development Berhad, 1MDB, was a Malaysian investment vehicle created in 2009. In 2015, documents leaked to the public evidenced widespread abuse of power, corruption, and embezzlement on an unprecedented scale of Malaysia's state funds via 1MDB. Hundreds of millions of 1MDB funds were taken out illegally. The Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission began investigating allegations of criminal behavior, and there were separate law enforcement and regulatory investigations in Australia, Hong Kong, Singapore, Switzerland, the UK, and USA. Following the investigation, it became clear that a number of banks and financial institutions across the board had been utilized by the protagonists in the 1MDB scandal and were therefore involved in numerous regulatory and criminal breaches that occurred via 1MDB. Tan Sri Dato' Amar Speaker, I do not wish to to go through the details of the 1MDB scandal, but to emphasize that it appears that the drafters of our Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund Board Bill have learned from the various root causes allowing the 1MDB scandal to happen and have put in place legal mechanisms to prevent weak compliance culture and insufficiently designed and maintained compliance controls. The Honourable Member from Ba'Kelalan can rest assured that this Sarawak GPS government will do its best for the people of Sarawak in accordance with the slogan Sarawak First. Suffice to say that no laws can be perfect, but that the Sarawak government have through this law put in place the legal, regulatory and compliance mechanism in the management of the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund. Tan Sri Dato' Amar Speaker, my reading of the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund Board Bill also shows that the Sarawak GPS government have adopted the Santiago Principles for Good Governance. The good practices of the Santiago Principles will promote more transparency with a clear and stable legal framework with no discrimination and a reciprocity in the application of the investment policies of the fund. One of the most important objectives of the Santiago Principles is on the independence of sovereign wealth funds from political power and put in place appropriate mechanism of internal controls, risk management and accountability. And we have all this laid out properly in this particular bill. Tan Sri Dato' Amar Speaker, the reading of the bill also shows that the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Fund is equipped with a system that allows for identification, evaluation, and management of the risk of their activities. This system will ensure that any investment will not exceed the risk tolerance defined in the investment mandate / policy, comprising reliable mechanisms of transmission of information which must be regularly submitted to an independent internal audit and scrutiny. Tan Sri Dato' Amar Speaker, the bill also places high emphasis on transparency of the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund. Transparency will have a big impact on the general governance of the fund, which in turn improve operational and investment practices. This Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund Board Bill also have mechanisms to conduct internal assessments regularly to check how they comply to the Santiago Principles. So, the Honourable Member from Ba'Kelalan can rest assured that this Sarawak GPS government is as transparent and will comply with all good governance principles. Tan Sri Dato' Amar Speaker, it is my fervent hope that the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund will have a long-term horizon and have strategic positions on the great projects of the future in energy, space and infrastructure. All investment comes with risk, even if it is managed by a full team of highly qualified and experienced professionals. As such, the investments mandate set by the Sarawak government must be reviewed regularly and must respond to the changing needs of Sarawak that are not satisfied by the market. Tan Sri Dato' Amar Speaker, I would like to end with a pantun because pantuns are very popular in this DEWAN. Dari lawas ke sematan, naik kereta membawa teman. Dari sekarang buat persiapan agar senang di masa depan. In conclusion, I fully support the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund Board Bill. Thank you.
I shall now call upon the Right Honourable Premier to do his winding up.
Terima kasih Tan Sri Dato' Mas Speaker. Tapi dulu saya ingin nak mengucapkan setinggi-tinggi penghargaan dan terima kasih kepada ahli-ahli yang telah menyokong rang undang-undang ini, iaitu Yang Berhormat daripada Daro, Yang Berhormat daripada Tebedu, Yang Berhormat daripada Lingga, Yang Berhormat daripada Balingian, Yang Berhormat daripada Bawang Asan, Yang Berhormat Pelagus, Yang Berhormat Ketibas, Yang Berhormat Bukit Bangunan, Yang Berhormat ahli daripada Bak Kelalan dan seterusnya, Yang Berhormat Kota Sentosa. I would like to express my appreciation for their remarks, their suggestion, and I will take note in terms of managing this Sarawak Wealth Fund. However, I would like to share the rationale of this Sarawak Wealth Fund. The fund is from our income. What is income? Income is something that you get and how you spend your income. Income must be managed prudently. And there are three factors that reflect how you manage your fund. One, you spend what you need. That's normal expenditure. Number two, you invest your income in order for you to get certain returns. Number three is saving. These are the three factors that must be considered when you manage your income prudently. Investment, there is a risk. Sometimes you got good return, sometimes you lose. That is investment. But when you place your fund in saving, it is forced saving, what we call dalam bahasa Melayu, sedia payung sebelum hujan. This is what we call prudent management of income. Number two, we ask ourselves, is Sarawak going to have income, good income or not? I just present 11 billion budget, income revenue projected. Before, I think, those who have been here, the highest we got is between 4, 5, and 6 billion. But today, it's above 10 billion. Is this income going to be more? Based on our planning now, with the new stream of revenue, based on our new economy, including hydrogen, including new technology, there is a potential that Sarawak will get extra revenue. What are you going to do with this revenue? Are you going to spend all? No. We must also take into consideration the future, because the revenue that we got now is non-renewable. Oil and gas is depleting resource, but you have to find new resource. Now people are talking about renewable energy, and we got that resource and technology. And therefore, I feel in future we got extra stream of revenue, and we must save part of this revenue for future generation of Sarawak. That's number 2. Number 3, how you want to manage this sovereign fund? Of course, there's a risk there of abuse. But we want to curtail that abuse by placing layers of check and balance. And our fund is to be reported to this DEWAN, the paramount check and balance. If there is an abuse, if there is an abuse, then DEWAN can check it, and we have a select committee to find out the result of it. And these are the reason why we have to use the Santiago principle, and we are going to be a member of forum, Sovereign Fund Forum in London, so that we are being checked by the international body based on the international principle of Santiago. With that, Dr. Speaker, once again, thank you. I think I have winding up. I'm doing winding up. You should have raised it. No, you should have raised it earlier. You should have raised it earlier. Dr. Speaker, that is the rationale. I would like to say thank you very much for all the support given by the members of this House. Thank you.
Yang berhormat, the question for the DEWAN is that the motion standing in the order paper in the name of the Right Honourable Premier of Sarawak, Minister for Finance and New Economy, and Honourable Member for N26 Gedong, be passed and referred to the Committee of the whole House. As many as are of the opinion say yes. Yes. As many as contrary opinion say no, the yes of it, the motion is passed and referred to the Committee of the whole House. The DEWAN shall now resolve into the Committee of the whole House to consider the bill which stands committed to the committee. The DEWAN shall now consider the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Board Bill 2022.
Clauses 1 to 61.
The question is that clauses 1 to 61 are ordered to stand part of the bill. As many as the opinions say yes. As many as the contrary opinions say no, the yes of it, clauses 1 to 61 are ordered to stand part of the bill.
Schedule.
The question is that the schedule be ordered to stand part of the bill. As many as the opinions say yes. Yes. As many contrary opinions say no, the yes of it, the schedules are ordered to stand part of the bill.
Enacting clauses, schedule and title.
The DEWAN shall now resume. Yang Amat Berhormat Premier.
Yang Tan Sri Dapan Speaker, I wish to report that the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund Board Bill 2022 has been considered by the Committee of the whole House and agreed to without amendment.
Rang Undang-Undang Kerajaan, bacaan kali yang ketiga, Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund Board Bill 2022. Yang Amat Berhormat Premier Sarawak, Menteri Kewangan dan Ekonomi Baru dan Adun N26 Gedong.
Tan Sri Dato' Ahmad Speaker, I beg to move that the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Fund Future Board Bill 2022 be now read a third time and do pass.
Ahli yang berhormat, the question before the Dewan is that the Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund Board Bill 2022 be read a third time and do pass. As many as the opinions say yes, as many as the contrary opinions say no, the yes have it, the bill is read a third time and passed.
Sarawak Sovereign Wealth Future Fund Board Bill 2022.
Ahli yang berhormat, the sitting is now adjourned and the House shall resume its sitting at 9 a.m. tomorrow.